you started your career in investment banking because you didn't really know what you wanted to do. And so I think, to start off, because a lot of our audience, they want to start their careers in investment banking. So what made banking feel like the right option for you at the time, given, you kind of were still trying to figure things out?
Interestingly, when I was a senior, so I was in the Haas School of Business and I was taking a business ethics course with a professor. And unlike many of my classmates, I was very indecisive, I guess, about which path I wanted to go. I actually studied for the LSATs senior year, took the test, and I was in the process of preparing to apply to various law schools. I've heard from someone, oh, you should get a JD MBA. It sounded good, and this professor and I was chatting after class, and I kind of told him what I was thinking, and he's like, I strongly suggest that you don't, or he said, or at least wait, because he had a JD MBA, and he's like, it's not that much more impressive than actually getting real world experience. So he actually said, if you ever want to go back to law school, you can, but go out there, work a couple of years, figure out what you like, what you don't like. So that was one of the really good advice I had when I was younger. And given the fact that I did not know exactly what path I wanted to go, I wasn't, maybe I'm a little quirky this way, but in my early 20s, I wasn't really interested in more of the social life, I guess. Because I had friends who's like, hey, they get a job, you're working 40, 45 hours a week and, you have your weekends free, you go out,
Yeah.
hang out with your friends, go clubbing, various things that young people do. And I wasn't too interested in it. So I wanted to select at least next 2, 3 year job where I could maximize the amount of learning. And really, investment banking, consulting, those were the type of jobs that I didn't exactly know what I was getting into, but I knew they worked you. There was a high expectation in terms of hours and stress and effort. And really, I was looking to maximize the amount of exposure I would get in the next 2 years, 3 years. And, that's the reason why I kind of chose that field, especially during .com days. Definitely, I got more than what I wanted. So it was a pretty intense period of time,
Yeah.
and I think I packed in a lot of deals because of the time that I was working in banking.
You're one of the few people that I know who has worked in both consulting and investment banking. So, like, I think you did 2 years in consulting first, then you did 3 years at Lehman, and then you later also went back to consulting at Booz. And I know a lot of the college students kind of struggle to choose between these two paths because kind of a lot of the same rationale that you have probably like it's a very similar profile of people who
Mhm.
are attracted to consulting and banking, right? Like they want to learn a lot, they want to go into something prestigious. They want to go into something that is, going to get them a lot of responsibility. Is going to set them up well with exit opportunities and, all of the above. And so I guess as someone who's gone through both, based on your experience, obviously there's no like right or wrong answer, but like what would you say are like the biggest pros and cons of each one?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I were to put it in a nutshell, investment banking has got very different flavors too within banking, right? You have your folks that focus on equities like IPO, secondaries, and then there's folks that focus on deal making, M&A, LBOs. So, I mean, investment banking's got all kinds of flavor. If you want to go into debt, you want to go into, and different sectors, right? If you want to focus on tech or oil and gas, there's all kinds of different sectors and flavors, but ultimately the things you learn in banking is around financial focused on like deal making, right? So you are preparing your client to for some kind of financing event, right? So your focus is on that, like whether it's an MA or a convert, you're trying to get your clients a solution for a financial problem. I think consulting comes in all kinds of flavors too, but let's focus on strategy consulting. I think strategy consulting's a bit more, no, I would say it's a lot more operationally focused. You learn various aspects of other part, and finance operations couldn't be included in that. I worked on a large project where it was operational improvement for their SG&A function, so included finance, HR. But you learn about, I think it's a wider breadth of
Mm,
business problems that you are asked to tackle.
yeah.
And I think from a work experience perspective, the difference here is that banking is you may be working on a number of deals at the same time. And I don't know how it is these days, but back when I was in banking, there was so much deal flow that you were working on multiple deals at the same time. Whereas if you are starting out as a in a management consulting field, you mostly get assigned to a client, a project, and the duration of that project could run from a month to the longest project I was on was like 9 months. So you definitely get to go deeper with a client in consulting, whereas in banking, it could be very compressed and could be as short as a couple of weeks or a month to get a deal done. I think there's pros and cons for both.
Yeah.
If I could, I actually, back on my career, I think having both actually made me somewhat unique
Hmm.
in terms of what was on paper, because a lot of my peers were either in banking or in consulting. Not many of us actually had a good chunk of experience in both. Both of those experiences were just very instrumental
Yeah.
in helping my career.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of students I talk to, because like they've never done either, and it's just so hard to know what you're more of a fit with when you haven't done either, and so it's all through kind of hearsay or just what other people tell you, right? And then if you talk to a banker, they're probably going to tell you banking's better. If you talk to a consultant, they say consulting's better. Everyone's biased towards whatever it is that they did, and I think a lot of students just they almost kind of like have an oversimplification of, well, in banking you get paid more, but in banking you also work longer hours, so like the work life balance is not as good, and then that's kind of like how they're making that trade off. And then so I, for example, I talk to students sometimes, they're like, oh yeah, I don't work life balance is really important to me, so I'm going to choose consulting, or like, oh, I really want to make a lot of money, so I'm going to choose banking. So it's just like I don't feel like that's I feel like it's an oversimplification. It's not super well thought out, right?
No, I agree with you. I've heard this, and I've also faced these dilemma too. So the concept of work life balance, if I can touch on that for a second,
Yeah.
it's definitely changed a lot. And I think there's more emphasis on having this work life balance. And I always found it to be confusing, or I never really understood why there had to be this binary separation. And this isn't to
Between
say
work and
work should,
life, you
yeah,
mean?
yeah, what work should be like. I'm not saying you should just work and that's your life. I think, but when I think about the life side, it's like having fun, right? Having fun, being social, being
Yeah.
enjoying your time. Has it gone to a place where work is so dissatisfactory that
Huh.
you can't enjoy your work? There was times that, yeah, work was really tough and stressful and it sucked. But there's also times where going through those experiences with your teammates was fun. Like I look back and I think about the analyst class in my Lehman. We had fun. It was we were working hard, but it was fun. Same thing with in consulting, after a hard day's work, you go out, get steak dinners, and you hang out, get to make friends that I still have today. So yes, the hours were long, but it wasn't something that I felt like I had to sacrifice. Later in my career, when I moved out of that industry, it was for more family time. But in my early to late 20s, my life was
Yeah.
my coworkers and my friends, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, some of my really close friends have come through work, various different stops along the way. Some from Square, and we'll touch on this later, but that was a really fun time when I was there, um, and we worked really hard. But I always tell people, you're ever gonna work hard, or if you're ever gonna do these types of hours, the time to do it is when you're 21 or 22. You're not married, you don't have kids. Literally, you have so much time. Like now that I'm a parent and I think back to how much time I had back then, it's like it's almost funny, right? It's just like the definition of busyness is just completely changes once you start having these family obligations. And so I think it's like you pay your dues when you are young and you have the time and you have the luxury and you also have the stamina physically to do that, and then you kind of reap the rewards of having paid your dues
Mhm.
for the rest of your career. So that's kind of what I usually encourage younger folks to do.